I never thought my life would turn into one of those trashy soap operas. But here I am, sitting in my car outside my brother's house, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles are turning white. I can't believe it's come to this. Let me back up. I'm Jake, 32 years old, and up until a few months ago, I thought my life was going great. I had a steady job in finance, a nice condo, and most importantly, I was engaged to the woman of my dreams, Emma. We had been together for 5 years, and I had no doubt she was the one. We were planning a wedding, picking out venues, arguing over whether we should have a band or a DJ, all the usual stuff. But then my brother, Liam, came back into my life. Liam and I have always had a complicated relationship. He's 3 years younger than me and has always been the reckless, charming one. The one who never had a real job but somehow always had money. The one who could talk his way out of anything. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. The guy who got straight A's, the guy who worked his ass off to build a life for himself. My parents always favored Liam, probably because they felt bad that he never seemed to have his life together. I should have known better than to trust him. Liam showed up in town 6 months ago after disappearing for nearly 2 years. He claimed he had business opportunities abroad, but I knew better. More likely, he had scammed his way into a mess and needed to lay low. But when he came back, he acted like nothing had changed, as if we were still kids who could just pick up where we left off. I should have told him to stay away. At first, things were fine. He crashed at my place for a few weeks while he figured things out. Emma was always nice to him, but I never thought much of it. She was just being polite, the way she always was with my family. And Liam? Well, Liam was just being Liam. Flirting with her in that way he flirted with every woman, grinning like he had the world in his pocket. I ignored it. I was an idiot. 3 months ago, Emma started acting different. She was distant, distracted. She started coming home late from work, avoiding eye contact when I asked her about wedding plans. I thought she was just stressed. I thought maybe she was having doubts about the wedding. I never even considered the real reason. Then, one night, I got home early from a business trip. I wasn't supposed to be back until the next morning, but my last meeting got canceled, so I caught an earlier flight. I didn't tell Emma. I figured I'd surprise her. I picked up her favorite takeout and drove home, excited to spend the night with her. I walked into our apartment, and everything seemed normal. The lights were on, the TV was playing some reality show. I called out for Emma. No answer. I set the food down and walked toward our bedroom. The door was half open, and I heard whispers. And then I heard his voice. Liam. I wish I could tell you I reacted calmly. I wish I could tell you I took a deep breath, walked in there like a man, and confronted them rationally. But that's not what happened. Instead, I kicked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. There they were. Emma, wrapped in nothing but my bedsheets. Liam, sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, looking at me like a deer caught in headlights. I don't even remember what I said. I just remember yelling, my vision going red, my heart pounding so hard it felt like my chest was going to explode. Emma started crying. Liam, being the absolute piece of shit that he is, just smirked. Smirked. Like this was all some big joke to him. Come on, man, he said, standing up, acting like he was in control of the situation. It's not what it looks like. I nearly punched him in the face. I wanted to, but Emma got in the way, sobbing, begging me to listen. Listen to what? That she had been sneaking around with my own brother for weeks? That everything we had built together was a lie? That the woman I had planned to marry, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had betrayed me in the worst possible way? I walked out. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove. For the next few weeks, I crashed at a friend's place, trying to wrap my head around everything. I blocked Emma. I blocked Liam. I didn't want to hear their excuses, their apologies, their bullshit. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Liam called me yesterday. And you won't believe what he said. I should have ignored the call. After everything he had done, after the way he and Emma betrayed me, I should have let it go to voicemail. But some stupid part of me, maybe the part that still thought of him as my brother, answered. Jake, man, we need to talk? I almost laughed. We? There was no we anymore. I was sitting on my friend Nate's couch, staring at my phone, debating whether I should just hang up. But something in Liam's voice was different. He wasn't smug this time. He actually sounded desperate. What the hell do you want? I snapped. Look, I know things are messed up between us, he said, like he hadn't just destroyed my entire life. But I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. I didn't care. Whatever important thing he had going on, it wasn't my problem. But before I could tell him to go to hell, he dropped a bomb. I need 100 grand. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it, like maybe I had misheard him. Are you joking? I'm serious, man. I'm in deep shit. I let out a bitter laugh. Let me get this straight. You sleep with my fiancée, you wreck my life, and now you want me to give you $100,000? Are you high? Liam sighed like I was being the unreasonable one. I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. I was about to hang up, but then he said something that stopped me cold. Jake, if I don't get this money, I'm dead. I went silent, because as much as I hated him, as much as I wanted to believe he was just pulling another scam, there was something in his voice that scared me. Explain, I said through gritted teeth. Liam hesitated. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. He sighed again. I borrowed money. A lot of money. From the wrong people. I thought I could pay it back, but things went sideways, and now they're giving me a week to come up with it. I rubbed my temples. Jesus, Liam. How the hell did you even get into this mess? It doesn't matter. It does if you expect me to help you. There was a long pause. Then he muttered, I was trying to make things right. I actually laughed at that. Right? Right. Liam, the only thing you've ever made right is your exit whenever shit gets tough. He didn't argue. He knew it was true. I don't deserve your help, he admitted. I get that. But I'm out of options, Jake. I swear, after this, I'll disappear. You'll never have to see me again. And that should have been enough. I should have told him to screw off, let him deal with whatever mess he got himself into. But against my better judgment, I asked one more question. Who did you borrow from? Liam hesitated again, and that's when I knew it was bad. Finally, he whispered, Frankie DeLuca. I felt my stomach drop. Frankie DeLuca wasn't just some loan shark. He was the kind of guy who made people disappear. The kind of guy who didn't do second chances. And Liam owed him 100 grand. I exhaled sharply. How much time do you have? 1 week. I ran a hand through my hair. And you thought I'd just have 100 grand lying around? Liam let out a humorless chuckle. You've always been the responsible one, man. You've got savings. Investments. A good job. I gritted my teeth. I worked my ass off for that money, Liam. You think I'm gonna just hand it over after what you did? Silence. Then, softly, Jake, I'm your brother. And that was the worst part. Because no matter how much I hated him, no matter how badly he screwed me over, he was still my brother. I closed my eyes. I need time to think. I don't have time. Then that's your problem. I hung up. And now, here I am, sitting outside his house, gripping the steering wheel, trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. I don't owe Liam anything. He deserves whatever's coming to him. But if he's telling the truth, if Frankie DeLuca really is after him, he might not have a week. He might not even have a day. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every possible scenario. Every single one ended the same way. Liam had screwed up, and now he wanted me to clean up his mess. But this wasn't like before. This wasn't him begging for rent money or asking me to cover a bounce check. This was life or death. Frankie DeLuca wasn't the type of guy you could negotiate with. By morning, I felt like a zombie. I called in sick to work, which I never did, and drove around aimlessly, trying to figure out my next move. Part of me wanted to let Liam deal with the consequences. He had made his bed. But the other part, the part that still remembered us as kids, riding bikes until sunset, sneaking into the neighbor's pool, laughing until our stomachs hurt, that part couldn't let him die. I ended up back at his place. The house was a disaster, exactly what I expected. Empty beer bottles on the counter, an overflowing ashtray, a half-eaten pizza from God knows when. Liam was sitting on the couch, looking like hell. He hadn't shaved, and his eyes were bloodshot. He didn't say anything when I walked in, just gave me a tired, knowing look. I sat down across from him. The room smelled like stale beer and regret. "Tell me everything," I said. Liam exhaled, rubbing his face. "It started with poker. A couple of guys invited me to a game, high stakes, easy money. At first, I was winning. Thought I had it all figured out. But then I got cocky. Typical. Liam never knew when to walk away. I lost big," he continued. "Didn't have the cash to cover it, so I borrowed. Figured I'd win it back the next night. But it just got worse." I clenched my jaw. This wasn't a simple gambling problem. This was him getting in deep with people who didn't forgive. "They gave me a chance," he said. "Frankie doesn't like making examples out of people unless he has to. But I've missed 2 payments already. That was bad. Really bad. If Frankie hadn't sent his guys after Liam yet, it was only a matter of time. And once they did, it wouldn't be just threats." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "And Emma?" Liam sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It wasn't supposed to happen, man. She was just there. And I was a mess. She was pissed at you for working too much, and one night, it just—" I held up a hand. I didn't want to hear it. It didn't matter. Nothing he said would make it better. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I asked, "What happens if you don't pay?" Liam swallowed hard. "They'll start with breaking a few bones. Then, if I still don't have it, well, you know how this goes." I did. I rubbed my temples. "You said you needed 100 grand. That's the full debt?" 85, plus interest," he muttered. "And a late fee." I almost laughed. Frankie DeLuca charged late fees like this was some credit card bill. I had the money. Not in cash, not all at once, but I had savings, investments I could liquidate. It would drain me, but I could do it. But should I? Liam had done nothing to deserve my help. He'd taken from me, again and again. And now, he wanted this? And yet, if I did nothing, I'd have to live with the knowledge that I let my own brother die. The thought of it made me sick. Liam watched me carefully. He knew I was debating it. He could probably see the wheels turning in my head. I stood up. "I need time." "Jake, I shot him a look, and for once, he shut up. I walked out without another word. I spent the next 2 days weighing my options, but no matter how I looked at it, every path felt like a loss. Paying Liam's debt meant rewarding his recklessness, draining my own hard-earned savings for someone who had never once shown me loyalty. Letting him face the consequences meant living with the guilt of his inevitable fate. I avoided my phone. Liam called, texted, even left voicemails I didn't listen to. I knew what he wanted. He wanted confirmation that I was going to bail him out. But I wasn't ready to make that decision. Not yet. Instead, I did something I never thought I would. I went to see Frankie DeLuca. Finding him wasn't hard. Frankie operated out of a gentleman's club downtown, the kind of place with velvet ropes and tinted windows, where the real business happened in the back rooms. I parked down the street, sat in my car for 10 minutes, then finally forced myself to walk inside. The bouncer barely gave me a glance before letting me through. I wasn't a threat. I was just another suit walking into the lion's den. The club was dimly lit, bathed in deep red lighting, with music thrumming low in the background. Women in expensive dresses sat in booths next to men who were much older, much wealthier, and much more dangerous than I was. A man at the bar recognized me before I even introduced myself. Frankie's people always knew who was coming. Within minutes, I was led through a side door, down a short hallway, and into a private lounge where Frankie DeLuca was waiting. Frankie was in his 50s, broad-shouldered but aging, his salt and pepper hair slicked back. He wore a dark suit, unbuttoned at the collar, and held a glass of whiskey in one hand. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. He wasn't a man who wasted time. He already knew why I was there. Sitting across from him, I explained that I wanted to settle my brother's debt. Frankie listened, nodding occasionally, but I could tell he was already thinking 3 steps ahead. He wasn't just assessing my words. He was assessing me, deciding whether I was worth dealing with. When I finished, he set his drink down carefully. He didn't care about Liam's excuses or my justifications. All that mattered was the money. 85,000, plus interest. 100 grand, paid in full, no negotiations. And then, the part one didn't expect. Frankie didn't just want the money. He wanted assurance. A debt like Liam's didn't just disappear because someone else paid it. It left a stain, a mark of weakness. If Frankie let Liam off too easily, others would think they could do the same. That's not how his world worked. So he gave me a choice. I could pay the full amount, plus an extra 20 grand, for the inconvenience. Or, Liam could take a lesson. A message to ensure he never forgot who he had crossed. Frankie wasn't asking for something permanent, just something painful enough that Liam would never make the same mistake again. A broken hand, a shattered kneecap, something to balance the scales. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, staring at the man across from me, realizing that no matter what I chose, Liam wouldn't walk away from this unscathed. Frankie gave me until midnight to decide. I left the club feeling like I had already lost. By the time I got back to my car, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of what I had to do. Frankie DeLuca had made it clear. Either I paid him $120,000, or Liam would pay in pain. And the worst part? Liam deserved every bit of what was coming to him. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at my phone. I could transfer the money. I had the savings, the investments, the emergency fund I had built up over years of hard work. But this wasn't my emergency. This was his. And if I bailed him out now, how long until he did it again? But could I really let him take the hit? Could I really sit back and let Frankie's guys crush his hand, shatter his knee, make sure he never forgot the debt he owed? I needed to see him. Liam was right where I left him, on that same worn-out couch, the same half-empty beer bottle in his hand, looking like he hadn't moved in days. The second he saw me, he sat up, his eyes wide with something that looked like hope. I told him what Frankie wanted. Every word, every detail. I told him about the extra 20 grand, about the choice Frankie had given me. I expected him to freak out, to start begging, to promise me he'd change if I just paid up. But he didn't. Instead, he just sat there, silent. And for the first time in his entire life, he looked like he understood just how badly he had screwed up. For the first time, he looked afraid. I told him the truth. This was the last time I was ever going to clean up his mess. If I paid, he was out of my life for good. No second chances. No coming back. If I didn't, he had to face what was coming. Liam nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. I pulled out my phone. My heart was hammering as I tapped through the banking app, staring at the number on the screen. $120,000. Gone in a second. Years of work, sacrifice, discipline, flushed away because my brother was a reckless idiot. I hovered over the transfer button. And then, I made my decision. I put my phone away. Liam's eyes met mine. He knew. I stood up and walked out the door. I didn't pick up when he called later. I didn't check my messages. I didn't let myself think about what was happening when Frankie's guys came for him that night. The next day, Liam was in the hospital. A broken hand, 2 cracked ribs. He was lucky. Frankie had gone easy on him. I didn't visit. A week later, he was gone. No calls, no texts. Just gone. And for the first time in my life, I was free. For weeks after everything went down with Liam, I barely thought about Emma. It wasn't that I had moved on. Not really. It was more like my brain had filed her away into a locked box, one I had no intention of ever opening again. Liam's mess had been an all-consuming fire, forcing me to make choices I never wanted to make. But once he was gone, I expected things to settle. I expected life to return to something normal. But the past doesn't just let you walk away. It started small, little reminders I couldn't avoid. A bottle of her shampoo still in my shower, a book she had left on the nightstand, a sweater of hers mixed in with my laundry. I should have gotten rid of them, should have burned everything that tied her to me, but I didn't. Instead, I ignored them, pretending they weren't there, like ignoring them would somehow erase the 5 years we had spent together. Then came the memories, uninvited and cruel. I would be standing in line at the coffee shop, and suddenly, I would remember the way she used to complain about people who ordered oat milk, but then turned around and did the exact same thing. I would be driving home from work and hear a song on the radio, and suddenly, I was back in the passenger seat of her car, watching her drum her fingers on the steering wheel, humming along like she didn't have a care in the world. I hated it. I hated that even after everything, She still existed in the corners of my mind, like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. Then, one night, she showed up. It had been almost 2 months since I last saw her, since the night I caught her in my bed with my brother. She hadn't tried to see me in person, just sent that one pathetic email that I had deleted without reading past the first line. But now, standing outside my apartment, was Emma. She looked different, thinner, like she hadn't been sleeping. Her hair was tied back messily, her eyes puffy, her makeup smudged like she had been crying before she even got here. I should have slammed the door in her face. Instead, against every rational part of my brain screaming at me to walk away, I let her in. She stood in the middle of my living room, arms wrapped around herself, looking around like she expected the place to be different. But it wasn't. Everything was exactly the same, except for the absence of her. No framed pictures of us on the walls. No candles on the coffee table. No traces of her lingering in the space she once called home. She told me she regretted everything, that she had made the biggest mistake of her life, that she never should have betrayed me, that Liam meant nothing to her. She told me she had been drinking that night, that she had been feeling alone, that she had been angry at me for always being so distant, so focused on work, so preoccupied with things that didn't include her. She told me all the things I had expected her to say, all the words I had already played out in my head 1,000 times. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. She told me Liam had stolen from her. Not just her dignity, not just her trust, but something real, something tangible. Money, jewelry, her laptop. Things she hadn't noticed were missing at first. Things she had assumed were misplaced in the chaos of her guilt. But as the days passed and she searched for them, she realized they weren't just lost. They were gone. And so was Liam. I felt the weight of her words settle in my stomach like lead. Liam hadn't just used her, hadn't just destroyed everything between us for his own selfish pleasure. He had robbed her. He had walked into my life, taken what he wanted, and then disappeared with whatever else he could carry. Emma was shaking when she told me, her voice breaking as she admitted she had tried to track him down, had even gone to Frankie DeLuca's club to see if he had resurfaced. But Liam was gone. Vanished. No one had seen him since the night he was sent to the hospital, and no one was looking for him, because as far as Frankie was concerned, the debt had been settled. But Emma had found something else. She had found another woman, a bartender at one of the dive bars Liam used to haunt, someone who had been stupid enough to fall for his charm the way Emma had, someone who had given him a place to stay for a few nights, someone who had woken up one morning to find her bank account drained and Liam's number disconnected. Emma looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw real regret in her eyes. Not just for what she had done to me, but for what she had let herself believe. She had thought she was different. She had thought she mattered to him. But in the end, Liam had done to her exactly what he had done to everyone else in his life. Used. Taken. Left. I felt a bitter satisfaction settle in my chest as I listened to her talk, as I watched her finally realize what I had known all along. That Liam had never cared about anyone but himself. That he had never been capable of it. Emma asked me if I could ever forgive her. I thought about it. Really thought about it. And then I told her no. She cried, and for the first time, I didn't feel anything for her. Not love, not hate, not sympathy. Just nothing. When she left, I knew I would never see her again. And I knew I didn't want to. Liam had taken a lot from me. My money, my trust, my patience. But Emma had taken something, too. She had taken my belief in the person I thought she was. And there was no getting that back.